Welcome back into Talking Fitchburg. Joined today from our, parks. I think she's parks. I think she's public works. But she is our tree preservation person. It's Anna Healy. Anna, welcome back to the show. Welcome to our new TF set. And more importantly, how are you doing today?
Thank you. I'm doing wonderful. I wish it would rain. It's a little dry out there.
It is a little dry.
So we have been watering everything we've planted this spring. It's interesting. We planted, and then we just immediately started watering because it hasn't rained. So other than wishing for rain, I'm doing excellent. Thank you for asking.
Boy, we got to go back and talk about some of the trees that you've planted this spring and,
Yes.
and learn a little bit more on how you protect those. But that's not what we're here. We are talking a little bit about protection. And what we're going to spend some time on today is talking about the Lacy Road reconstruction project
Excellent.
that's going on, basically from Seminole to Fitchrona. There's a lot of planning had gone in there. A lot of feedback had come in. And one of those pieces was the trees.
Yes.
Well, you are our tree savior.
I
But
try.
more importantly, there were steps taken to protect some of the trees that are in the area. So set it up first off, a little bit behind the scenes, before we even got to construction and what you've done to preserve the trees that we could. What happened leading up to getting to where we are today?
Great. Excellent question. So the first step was we hired a certified arborist to survey all the trees that would be impacted by the construction and kind of evaluate them in terms of just size, condition, species, and if they were candidates to be saved or not. In that process, we learned kind of what is there, what we would potentially be losing. We also learned what we potentially could be saving. And there are 4 heritage oak trees there. When I say heritage, those trees are probably between 80 and 150-ish years old.
Wow.
And we were able to work with the engineers and save those trees from initial demolition. So what that means is they were not taken down when all the other trees were cleared, and we actually actively worked to preserve them so they're on the site, post-construction for many years to come. And the first part of that was the survey to identify, these trees, what condition are they in? Are they good candidates for preservation? And indeed they are. And that just means that they're in good shape, they have good architecture, they don't have any old wounds, any old scars, they're not going to fall apart in the next windstorm. They're vigorous, younger, vigorous trees, young for an oak, somewhat young. And right, it's like young for an oak tree is old for a person. So.
Well, I would go down that path of saying, well, if I was thinking about preserving trees, I'd be like, well, what are we looking for that guarantees that the tree is going to be there? There's no guarantee in anything,
right?
But the things that you just described make sense. That there are ways to assess these things to determine their life expectancy. And
exactly, yeah. So we want to, most of the time when we're talking about preserving trees, we're talking about oak trees because those are the trees that have been on the landscape the longest. And we look for something, the big old beautiful trees, we would love to keep those as well. But it's really important to also look to some younger trees because they're more vigorous. They can take a little bit more, disturbance, and they have more runway. They're going to be around longer. So it makes sense. On this project, some of the trees that we're saving are in that 80 to 100 year range. There is one that's probably in that 150 year range. But that's part of the reason why they're good candidates is because they are, for an oak tree, relatively young. So, so I'm very excited that we were able to work with the engineers and work the project around these trees. And then the most important step, what we did is, well, first of all, work with the engineers, get the trees on the plans, and get the tree preservation, the area that needs around the trees it can't be disturbed. If death to an oak tree is running heavy equipment over the roots or piling dirt on the roots. So what we did is we put up what we call a tree protection zone, which is fencing. And I wish it was a little bit more permanent, but it ended up being snow fencing for a variety of reasons. So we partly so people could see it. So we put up, the snow fencing, and again, part of the pre-construction meetings and in the plans is this area is marked off that it cannot be disturbed. And it was really important to get that out with the plans for bidding, so everyone was on the same page in terms of the expectation that, hey, you can't just take this fence down at your convenience and do whatever you want to do. This needs to stay, and that's part of the agreement up front. So that's really, really important. And then we've been checking in. Since it is a construction project, I have been looking with binoculars from the closest open road, but I'm going over there later today, actually, but I haven't been right on site a whole lot, just from a construction safety standpoint. But we have been in pretty decent communication with the folks who are actually doing the work, the foremen out there, and also the engineers involved. And just communicating anything, I had told them, hey, if it comes, because they're going to be pretty close to some of those trees on the Lacy Road side, and I said, hey, if you think that you're going to hit a branch or something, let us know. I'd rather make a clean cut than have a rip.
Oh.
So we've just been in really close communication with all of those kind of logistical things, and it really, I think, has been very helpful. They know, and we're working together. I think that's the other piece to it, is that we're working together. I understand they have big equipment, things happen. I just want to make sure that when things happen, we can deal with it appropriately, instead of being like, well, whoops, and then finding out about it, when the project's over and we can't do anything. So it's been a collaboration, and I think that's the way that these projects need to be. And we will be dumping a lot of water in these trees, as I had mentioned before. It is very dry, and they're going to be losing some roots regardless. Like, it's just part of the project. It's part of the whole project. So we're going to be taking a 1,000-pound water tank in a snowplow out there. I know it's almost comical. Either later today or tomorrow, and really dousing those trees with a lot of water. So
I think it's incredible to know, to kind of pull the curtain back here on, oh my gosh, there are a ton of steps going on here too.
Yeah.
And I'm not just saying that as an employee of the city of Fitchburg. I'm saying it as, wow. I mean, there are a lot of things that are concerns for you,
right,
to preserve these things, and identifying those up front, definitely going to pay off, hopefully, in the end.
I hope so. And I think the upshot is that that area will be. We did need to redo the road for a variety of reasons, but it will be even better if we can retain some of those old trees. So it just adds value to the whole project overall, and it's definitely worth the effort. It takes a lot of coordination and a lot of collaboration and a lot of work, but we're willing to do it, and as has everyone else been in the process. So we really appreciate everyone's work, and we really think that it will pay off, and we'll have something to show for it at the end of the day.
And then on the flip side of this, so as construction continues, when you get to come back in and start planting, what are going to be some of the advantages with this new corridor and some of the trees that maybe you'll be able to bring back, or maybe we're going to start something new?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So we are bringing some new species in on this. So this is an interesting corridor because, it's obviously, it's east-west. So we have, some sun issues in terms of, so some of our biggest concerns when we plant new trees is frost cracking and sun scald and that kind of thing, because we have, especially here in Wisconsin in the winter, we often have really cold nights, and then in the morning we have this bright sun, and the part of the tree that's exposed to the sun will, thaw. The part of the tree that's not exposed to the sun will stay frozen, and then that causes the tree to crack open. It's called frost cracking, and that's a big issue for us. If you go around town, you can see trees that have been frost cracked. You see on the south side they've got a frost crack, typically a maple or linden, but we want to be able to retain those trees in the landscape. And because this is an east-west road, we have hopefully enough cover that we can plant a lot of different species and avoid those kinds of problems. We're trying a few new things. I hope do well. It's tough because the biggest threat to our trees now has just been the variability in temperature and rainfall. Typically, we don't get rain in November, or well, maybe, but we don't get rain when we should get snow, and we don't get, 40 degrees followed by -10. And that's kind of, that variability is what we're dealing with now. And so we're constantly trying new species that we think can handle that, as well as all of our natives. Some of them are trees from, that originally were from Asia or from, Europe or, different places, and we're giving them a try to see how they do. None of them are invasive. They're just, from a different place. But at any rate, so we will be planting, I think it's 230 trees along this corridor. I think it's going to look amazing, and the trees that we preserved will just add to that canopy right off the bat, which will be awesome. So I'm actually really looking forward to seeing the final product.
Yeah, me too, of course, and I'm glad for your work on this and all of the work across the city of Fitchburg as it comes to trees. There's a lot of stuff that happens there. We got to highlight some of that earlier this year. But if people do want to stay up or have a better understanding of the trees that we take on, or the work that goes on to preserve trees, plan for future planting of trees or beyond, where can we find more resources on that day to day?
Good question. So the International Society of Arboriculture, that's ISA, they have a great website about tree preservation. And if you either Google that or if you even call me, I can tell you how to find it. They have a really nice outline of how to preserve trees, and they actually have a booklet too, which is very handy and it's got best management practices on saving trees. And it's what we use, and it's quite good.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. I
You're
know it's a
welcome.
lot of stuff to go through, but I appreciate the time either way, and we'll hopefully get you back on here real soon when
Sounds
you're planting more
excellent.
trees.
Sounds awesome. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.